Well, hey folks, welcome to another edition of My Car Guru. I'm trying to wrap my head around the fact that it's December. Putting the Christmas tree up made it plainly evident. That's my job. I also have to put the lights on it. My wife bought a bunch of extra lights, and she said, I would really like to have all of these lights on the tree. And I said, honey, the tree was pretty full last year. I know, but I think it needs more. And I said, all right, I'll work on it. And so I did. I got them all on there. I mean, it lights up the east side of Greenville. And plus, it's a fake tree. That was always an anathema to me. No fake trees in my house. Well, I guess people change, and it is a lot easier. I mean, this one's like opening an umbrella. Well, it's not quite that easy. What I hate about it is having to, it gets, when it's sitting in a box, everything gets smashed, and so I have to do the fluffing to get it ready. It's just like life, right? Sometimes we need to get fluffed. I had to fluff my managers this morning. We had an early managers meeting talking about 2026 and what our plans are. And, of course, we look at personnel. We look at our facilities. We look at our current inventory, what it should look like versus what it does look like. We talk about our marketing principles. I've got 5 basic things I look at: price, product, service, access, and experience. And so we manage each of those areas to make sure that people want to buy cars from us, and that if we let any of those down, then we don't sell as many cars as we should, and we don't retain customers. So that's so important. And a lot of businesses don't waste time planning, and they just let what happens happen. But the car business is evolving so rapidly, it's really hard to adapt. I'll give you one example: price. I mean, cars have gone up dramatically, in the last 5 years. Pre-pandemic, it was a totally different ballgame. Everything's gone up. And some of it's due to tariffs, and a lot of it's due to over-complexity. I'll just say it. So this Nissan Armada that I bought, and my wife's going to be driving it. I was in the driveway last night in the dark trying to figure out how to get this light off of the dash. Somehow, we had pushed a button somewhere and turned a light on, which said that all of the collision avoidance software was deactivated. And I was being warned that if I wanted it to work, I needed to turn it back on. And so I'm telling you, I looked all over that dash. I thought it might be buried in one of the menus, on the screen. I was out there a good 20 minutes and getting pretty frustrated. I said, why would this be so hard to find? So I took a picture of the screen and I sent it to my service manager. I said, what is wrong with this thing? He said, well, there should be a button somewhere, a switch or something in the menus. And I said, I know that. I can't find it. Any idea where it is? He said, no, I'm not that familiar with the new Armada. So I called my nephew, Max. Max, how do I turn this off? He's also my next door neighbor. He said, I don't know, but I'll run up and try to help you figure it out. And I said, no, I'm too proud for that. So what did I do? I do what you're supposed to do when you get a new car. Get the owner's manual out. So this thing was called the VDC. No, I don't know what that stands for. Vehicle something. But it has to do with all of the sensors that are on the vehicle, the cameras, to keep you from running into people. It has collision avoidance. There's a lot of good software on there to keep you from running into people. And that's fine, but I could not find the button anywhere. So I go to the index, and I go to the V's, and there it was. VDC setting. And it showed me where the button was. So I'm inside. It's 20 degrees outside. So I go put my coat on. I said, I'll be back in a minute, honey. She said, where are you going? Your soup's ready. And I said, well, I've got to figure this out. So I go outside, and I get in the vehicle. There's no lights on in it because it's brand new. And so I'd never activated the switch that controls the lights so that they come on when you open the doors. Where's that? So I had to turn my phone on and turn on a flashlight, and I started looking around. And here it's Lenny Lawson out there in this car in the dark looking for the light switch. And I just happened to remember that typically they're on the roof near the rear view mirror. And I looked up there it is. And so I pushed that button, lights came on, and I looked to see where the owner's manual said the switch was. And I looked, and I just didn't see it. And so I just kept looking in that general area, and there it was. VDC off. I pushed the button, and it went off. And I was giddy. I had solved the problem and could go inside and eat my soup in peace. Do you get like that? Do you get to the point where you just get so frustrated that you are just, you have to take a break, you have to go think about it, and then come back and end up solving the problem, and how that makes you feel? Well, that's what my meeting this morning was with my managers. We identified key issues that we have, and we have them, just like any business. I mean, one of the things I've noticed over the years, my 47-year career, is nothing stays fixed. I mean, you like it, try to improve something. Let's say you have a process in the service drive, and when customers come in, there's something that you need to do and do it on a consistent basis. Maybe it has to do with the walk around that my service advisors are supposed to do. They're supposed to walk around your vehicle when you come in. Because trust me, if you come in for an oil change and you have a headlight out and we don't catch it and you don't know it's out, and then you get home and you say, my headlight's out. What did they break? It's our responsibility. You trust us to see that kind of stuff. So we do a walk around. Well, let's say that, our walk arounds aren't working like they should. We're not doing it 100%. Then we have to recalibrate. Talk to our manager or talk to our service advisor and say, guys, this is important. Do you understand why it's important? Yeah, we understand. And I said, well, why are we not doing it? Well, the phone's ringing off the hook. And, they come up with all kinds of excuses. But it doesn't matter what the excuses are, right? Sometimes they're genuine and you need to make some adjustments. But, we have to do the walkarounds, guys. And how often do we need to do them? 100% of the time. That's right. We do it 100% right, 100% of the time, at 100% volume. Where did I learn that? I learned that at Pal's, the fast food place. Yes, I learned a lot when I went to the Pal's school. They actually called the school, it was an interesting name. They call it the Mean Lean Profit Machine. And those of you who are listening to the podcast, you don't know what Pal's is. But it's probably the highest profit fast food business per store in the entire United States and Canada. Matter of fact, what do you think is the number one? Well, this was 2008 when I went to this school, so let's back up a little bit. What do you think the number one fast food place was in Canada? And everybody says McDonald's. That's right. And then they'll say Wendy's. No, neither one. A&W Root Beer. And while I was at the Pal's school, there were like 8 representatives there from A&W Root Beer of Canada to learn how to run a more profitable fast food business. They came to Kingsport, Tennessee to learn that. Sometimes you have to go out of your way to learn something good. And I learned a lot of good there. And I've translated that to, or a lot of their guidelines, not all of them, I wish I could, to the car business to improve our customer service, to improve our customers' experience, to make things work better in the dealership, to stay cleaner, neater. It just covers so many different aspects of your business. And so that's what my meeting was about. And that's what you have to do to be successful. Okay, I'm going to take my first break. I'll be back in just 1 minute. Okay, I am back. So I've had this customer, and they've had this vehicle in my shop for some time. and they can't pay their bill. What am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do with somebody that brings their car to the dealership? We fix it, and we put it outside and wait for them to come pay their bill, and they just don't come and pick it up. They don't pay their bill. Well, we call them, and we try to be nice, and we say, okay, what's the problem? What's going on? Sometimes, well, I just can't come up with the money, or, well, I don't really need the vehicle right now. We really don't want to be a storage lot for somebody, and we tell them, if you're going to just leave it, we got limited space here. We're actually having to rent the lot beside my dealership property. I've got 5.5 acres. We're having to rent this lot beside us to park overflow, and that overflow is our own vehicles because we don't have enough room. Our service department is so busy, with business. We do a lot. We service all makes and models. We have a good reputation. We have some very talented technicians. One of the few Ford dealerships that has as many completely certified master Ford technicians working at the same place. That's why we do a lot of business. There's people drive from 30, 40, 50 miles away to get their cars worked on here. As a matter of fact, we even have car dealerships that aren't certified to work on transmissions, for example, because they don't have a technician that is certified to do it. Then they can't do warranty repairs on transmissions. They send them to us to get them done. So anyway, back to the story. This person has this vehicle that they're just going to leave it here. That they're not going to pay us for it. And so finally, after I ended up having to call them, and they said, tell you what, we don't want the vehicle anymore. I said, well, that's no good. What are you going to do with it? They said, well, we're just going to bring you the title and sign it over to you. I said, well, I'll have to think about that. Number one, let me go out there and figure out what the thing's worth. And if it's something that we can sell, then I'll be willing to give you some money for it. And maybe we can offset your bill, hopefully. So I looked at how much their bill was, called my office, and they said, wow, that's pretty sizable. So then I looked at their vehicle, and it's got a lot of issues, but as far as value, it's close. And so if I discount the bill, then I could probably take the vehicle. So I called them back, and I said, well, bring me the title to the vehicle. Okay, I'll bring you the title. So they showed up yesterday and handed me an envelope. We sat in my office and talked for quite a while, had a nice conversation. But they handed me an envelope. Well, I'm expecting to open up the envelope and there's a title in there. Nope, no title. Matter of fact, the vehicle was not even in their name. Now that's a problem. How do you transfer ownership of a vehicle that's not in your name? Well, so I looked at it. They had a state of Tennessee registration form that you would fill out if you were going to go get tax. And it had the owner's name on it, and it was signed at the bottom. I said, well, this is interesting. So I look at the next piece of paper, and it is a power of attorney, and it's in the owner's name, and it's signed at the bottom. Now, power of attorneys, folks, are supposed to be notarized. And so I look at it, and it's not notarized. And so I've got a person trying to transfer me a vehicle in exchange for making their repair bill zero. They don't own it. Somebody else does. I have a power of attorney, have no idea if the person really signed it. So I said, well, I'm going to have to call this person. You can't call that person. Why not? All kinds of alarm bells are going off. Well, they finally relented. Yeah, go ahead and call. I guess they were offended. They thought I wasn't trusting them or whatever. But it's not about trust. I've got to have legal documentation. I need a title, and it's got to be signed by the person who owns the vehicle over to me. So anyway, I'm going to be calling them tomorrow and just find out that it's genuine. You just really have to be careful in the transfer of ownership to other people. Let's say that you have a relative that passes away, and in the will, they said that you can have the vehicle. Well, you take possession of the vehicle. Now what? Well, you've got to have a title. whose name is the title in? The person who died. So what do you have to have? One of the family members can't just sign that title. You're going to have some documentation as dictated by your DMV. They may say, well, we need a copy of the will. Well, I can't get a copy of the will. Well, then, you're going to have a hard time getting ownership of that vehicle. What if you have a power of attorney signed? Well, that's fine, but is it notarized? If it's not notarized, in many states, they won't acknowledge that either. So the time to take care of all this really is before you die, and not leave it for attorneys and judges and your family members to try to figure out. Give them the honor or the respect of a clear path. And that's one of the things that I've tried to do is, for example, if you come into my office and you open the top drawer, that's pretty much everything that my kids and my wife need to know if something happens to me. I mean, a will is great. I'm going to give this person this person that, and so forth. But I think it's important also to just write a letter and update it every year or so that your family knows where things are and what's important to you. I mean, a will can state a lot of that, but also, when it comes to specific things like bank accounts, where's the key to the safe deposit box? What things do you have in your household that are truly valuable? Just walk through it with them. I mean, a lot of families they don't do that because they don't want to think about it, right? I mean, my girls were that way. They said, Dad, I don't want to think about this. I said, honey, you have to. You don't have a choice. You have to take your emotional hat off and put on your business person hat or your logical hat. You have to be able to get through this. But then I backed it up with it's probably a 4-page letter. I mean, I think my first time I did that was when I was getting ready to go out of the country. I said, that plane goes down with my wife and me. They're going to be lost trying to figure stuff out, where all the insurance policies are, where the accounts are. This just so many different things. I mean, I have a lot of vintage cars and stuff like that. They need to know where the titles are to those vehicles so that they can do something with them. We just need to make it easy for them. And there may be some of you that have terrible relationships with other family members and you could care less, and that's fine. I mean, if that is your plan, the care less plan, then that's fine. That works for you, that's fine. But if you love your family members and you want to make it clear and understandable and easy for them, I just think that's a great gift to give to your family members, is that kind of clarity. And yeah, it's hard. It's hard to sit down and talk to them about it, but I think it's very valuable and very critical that we do that. Okay, I'll take my last break. I'll be back here in just a minute. Okay, I am back. One other thing. If you have a vehicle that's over 25 years old and you can't find a title, in the state of Tennessee, it's not a problem. If you want to sell it to somebody, you can without a title. All you have to do is write them a bill of sale, and then they can register it in their state if they will allow. You just have to know what the rules are before you think about passing something to somebody else. Now, I have titles for all of my old cars. You would expect that, wouldn't you? But a lot of people don't. They can't find them. I've run into this so many times. I bought a 1964 Volvo P1800S. And you may be thinking, well, that doesn't sound cool. It is one of the coolest cars ever made from an appearance standpoint. I just love that car. I restored it, and it was gorgeous. But anyway, that car didn't have a title. I couldn't find it. I said, well, just write me a bill of sale. So he did. He put my name on it, how I wanted it titled, but the selling price and all that. So I just took it to the DMV, or the registrar's office here in Greene County, Tennessee. And I said, I need to register this vehicle. She said, you have a title? I said, no, but I have a bill of sale. Well, we can't do that. Yeah, you can. It's over 25 years old. Oh, okay. So they printed a title. Well, I take that back. In that case, they couldn't print a title. It had to go to the state. They do some kind of a search. And then I got a title in the mail within 10 days. And so you can do that, like I say, if the vehicle is over 25 years old in the state of Tennessee. So before you buy a car from somebody, a vintage car or any car for that matter, you have to find out what the status of the title is. You know, some people will lie to you. Believe it or not, they will. And they'll say, well, I'll get you a bill of sale or something like that. And you say, well, that'll be okay. And come to find out there's a lien on that car. They put up the title for a title loan at 32% interest. And you can't get your title because the title loan place has it. And they're going to come looking for that car because, in fact, they really do own it. And so you got to make sure that's not the situation. One of the things I would also want to make sure of, if I had any doubts, I would go to my state. If the vehicle was supposed, let's say it has Missouri tags on it, and you live in Missouri, then I would go to the tag office in Missouri and say, you know, are there any liens on this car? All I got was a bill of sale. Would you check and see if there's any liens on this car? And they can pull it up. You know what a lien is, right? That's when somebody owes money on that particular car. They're using it as collateral. And if they say, yeah, there's a lien on this car for $2,000 at ABC Credit Union, well, they lied to you. And so, I mean, you may have the car and you may have a bill of sale. You may even have a title. You know, somebody could have filed a lien. It could be a mechanic's lien, you know, where they took it to be repaired and they never paid the bill. And so the shop goes and puts a mechanic's lien on it. Well, the only way that you can get a title in that case is to go pay their bill. Or if there's a lien on it, you know, they just borrowed money against it, and you got to go pay that loan, or you're not going to get a title. Sorry. That's just the way it works. So do the research, find out about the car, find out about the status of the title. You know, try to find the history. If you're trying to buy an old vintage car, there's not going to be anything on Carfax. There's not going to be anything on AutoCheck. There's no history. If it's got 13 digits in the VIN or fewer, then there's no history on those websites. It has to be 17 digits, and then you can find out some history about the car. So this is just more of the kind of stuff you'll learn on My Car Guru. If you have any questions, specific questions, send me a text, 423-552-2020, or send me an email to lennylawson2020@gmail.com. And if you're interested for a Christmas present for somebody, you need the My Car Guru guidebook. It's free. Just send me your email address to that phone number, 423-552-2020. Or you can call the dealership and at Gateway Ford or Gateway Nissan, 423-639-5151, and tell them, hey, I need Lenny to mail me a copy of the My Car Guru guidebook. I'll print it out and mail it to you as long as you give them an address. Well, thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.